have not met. With me tonight is Laban Duke, who's the executive director of the Hillsdale sort of campus in Summers, the Blake Center for Faith and Freedom. And other than Dan and Jennifer sat through all the meetings, we had a number of hearings when Hillsdale came to town, I guess about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And I'll just give you a little bit of background of what happened and where we want to go, with the understanding that we will be having a public hearing on the revision of the special use or modification of the special use permit. But most of you are probably familiar with the building known as Monticello that Presley Blake built several years ago for several $1 million. And it's a replica. I don't think it's full size, right? It's
Jefferson never got around our garage, but other than that, it's pretty close.
Okay, so so that's the last building on the left, and then there is a house that's sort of set back that doesn't belong to Hillsdale. There's another house, so that's 732 Hall Hill Road. At 708 Hall Hill Road is a large house where Mrs. Blake's daughter lived for some time, and where Laban now lives with his family and on everything and runs all of the programs there. And then the next down is what was the Blake's house, 700 Hall Hill, and all of those properties have been deeded to Hillsdale. And the Mrs. Blake, Presley passed away a couple of years ago. Mrs. Blake has a life use of the 700 address. Has been coming up during the summer, and then
she's since relinquished that.
Oh, she has.
Yeah,
okay.
So we own all those properties now.
All right. I guess we should have talked before this. So anyway, we went for a special use permit back in I think 2020, right around COVID time, and there were a number of meetings. We had the general counsel from Hillsdale, Bob Norton. And then there were several other officials from Hillsdale, other lawyers involved. And we reached sort of a consensus. Hillsdale initially wanted, I guess, more than what we received, but we then asked for the ability to run events on the property. And those events mainly consist of seminars. When you think of a college, you often think of a college where students come and live or students commute to. That's not what this is. This is a where speakers are brought in for 3 or 4 days. I think that's the longest one is 4 days.
Typically just Friday evening, Saturday morning is the predominant setup. We have one that's 3-4 days in the whole lineup.
And so professors from Hillsdale's located in Michigan and also has a facility in Washington, D.C. and I believe in California?
We've quietly acquired that land in California.
All right. So
George knows about it. You do too.
Well, I guess we really should have talked before.
No, it's fine. Yeah, they were given 1,000 acres in California. Wow. If you can imagine.
So this property is what, about 80 acres, 90 acres?
It's actually 100 acres. Frontage properties constitute about 30 acres altogether, and then there's 70 acres in the back.
Okay. So when we were going through the approval process, there were concerns that what was going to happen here would be what happens on college campuses across the country. And those were legitimate concerns that the residents had. Legitimate in that they were fearful, but it was not what Hillsdale intended. So what Hillsdale intended was to run these seminars and then to open up the property, as the Blakes had always done, for people to use and enjoy the property. And Hillsdale's actually tightened up on what can occur on the property as far as people using it for recreation. But one of the restrictions, and so we're looking for 4 modifications, and the first modification is the restriction on the number of people that can be on the property outside using it for recreation. And what the commission approved was 20 people at one time. And we found that to be problematic for a couple of reasons. One, Hillsdale's been approached by local cross-country teams to be able to use the facility, and if you have a boys and girls high school cross-country team, you probably have more than 20 people there at once. So right away we have a problem. And then leading us to one of the other restrictions that we would like to lift is that the Rotary would like to hold the annual fishing derby there. And so we have two issues there. One is the limitation on the 20 people, and two, we're not technically approved to be able to have charitable events there. So we're asking that charitable events be allowed, and I'm going to let Laban speak a little bit more to
Yes,
that.
sir.
And then the two other restrictions, one includes the number of attendees at a seminar. And most of you have probably not been in Monticello, but it's set up very nicely for up to 75 people to attend a seminar. And the restrictions are such that some of the events are only for 30 or 40 people, and we'd like to allow 75 people to attend the seminars that Hillsdale puts on. And the important thing to note, and obviously be proven wrong at the public hearing, but we are not aware, and we've talked to Jennifer about this, of any complaints by any of the neighbors regarding any of the activities that have occurred since Hillsdale has taken the property and run these events and these seminars. There's a parking lot that's been built that's set way down, and Jay Ursery from J.R. Russo had prepared the plans for that. And when he spoke at the public hearings, he said you won't even be able to see it from the road. It's behind the building and it's set down. And that is the case. If you are on that road, you will not see that parking lot. And so we don't believe that Hillsdale has done anything to annoy or upset the neighbors in the 3 years, or I guess maybe 2 years since seminars have been held. And then there's a restriction on the number of seminars that are allowed each year, and has been presenting Jennifer as your zoning enforcement officer with a sheet each year of all of the seminars that have occurred and what's planned to show that Hillsdale is staying within that restriction. That number removed, the limitation on those is removed. And it's not that Hillsdale is planning on having seminars every weekend. The facility's not designed for that, and I'm not sure, even though Laban is in good shape
I have
and
to
young,
have a life.
Yeah, I'm not sure he could keep up with that. So that's what we're asking in the way of a modification, are those 4 items. And those are the reasons. But I'm going to let Laban speak, unless you have some questions for me immediately. I'm going to let Laban speak a little bit more about these, as he knows more about it than I do.
I have one question. So you said you're allowed X amount of events per year.
Yes.
Currently? What's the number, and what are you looking to go to? Because that's not in, that's note 1 in this. It's not. So
I think we asked in our special use, in the modification, that the limitation be removed.
Yeah, just that's all it says.
Where we are now is, and I was going to submit at the public hearing what's allowed, but I can actually give this to you now, and then we'll also the record at the public hearing. But what are allowed are, on 3-day seminars, 9 are allowed annually with a limit of 50 per 3-day seminar. 4-day seminars, 2 are allowed annually with a limit of 20. Lecture programs, 3 are allowed annually with a limit of 75. There's one admissions reception for local students, I guess from the Northeast,
right,
that might be attending Hillsdale.
Looking to attend Hillsdale or any other competitive admissions program. The way we do them, we're trying to help kids just participate in the competitive admissions process, even if it's not at Hillsdale.
And then there's a local alumni reception, one annually, a guest limit of 40. There's educator training sessions to be held in the summer month, 2 annually, 30 on the guest limit. There is a one-time special event that Hillsdale has not held yet because of COVID. It was initially, when we started, the idea was that to thank the Blakes, and unfortunately Presley has passed away, and all of the supporters of this, there was going to be a sort of party, but a big event. And
Art gala,
that has not occurred yet because of various issues, the main one being COVID.
Yeah, COVID and speaker availability has been tricky since.
So that's a one, and we're not asking that be removed, that restriction be removed. We're not to turn this into, somewhere where big events are occurring all the time. It's the limit of, it's the seminars and those events where we want to have no limit and be able to allow up to 75 people. The special event is an unlimited. But you probably are aware the zoning, the town of Somers has a mass gathering permit requirement. If more than 500 people will be in attendance, you have to apply at least 60 days before for a mass gathering permit. You have to get the police department and the fire department and public works and I think the building department and zoning.
Zoning, sanitarian, works, police, fire.
Pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
To approve this ahead of time, and that's if it's going to be more than 500. And I don't know if this one-time event when Hillsdale does hold it will be.
It would depend on who we can for the keynote. The date we're looking at is August 11th, which would be, and that's on the list I gave you.
Yeah, I just want to point out. I guess I don't know if now is a good time, but to interject, it expires in August.
Right.
You got one big event within 3 years. So I don't know if you want to address that.
Maybe we should apply for a modification.
Does it expire at the beginning of August or? Because I had it in my head that we had the whole month.
August 2nd. The effective date of your approval was August 2nd, 2020.
All right.
So for the public hearing, maybe if you take this 4-page of conditions and reference each one that you want.
Okay.
So we could be more specific and then.
So we'd be asking to move 9 days on that, to the 11th.
I
would just ask for.
I would ask for another
of a year.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well.
That's why we are.
What if something happens?
Right. You don't want to go back for a public
Fair
hearing
enough.
again
Just for that. So okay. So again, we're not asking for more big events at this time. We will ask though to have this one go out one more year. And then there's chapel events, which are unlimited because Hillsdale is a religious institution, and we're not convinced that technically there can be any of these requirements, but we're willing to live with the requirements. And that was sort of the agreement that got worked out, is that based on freedom of religion, it's awful difficult for a town to put restrictions on the institution. And just to let you know, the town attorney was involved, and the town actually hired a religious law expert, as did Hillsdale. So there were about 8 lawyers involved with this whole process.
You see,
yeah,
They were long meetings.
They were long meetings, yes, and there were many of them. But in any event, I only have one copy of this. You're welcome to it. But that kind of lists everything. It was a summary that we did so that everybody at Hillsdale understood exactly what was allowed when events were being planned.
If you want, I can.
I anything. Chapel events are unlimited. How many chapel events?
Right now we're having chapel type events every other week.
Every other week.
It really ends up being. Bible study's probably not strong enough because we're having profs from Gordon Conwell come and talk, transcendental theology and theological ethics. It's like Bible study plus.
No complaints from the neighbors or anything? Nothing called in?
No.
Well, that's
to your
the thing.
point, you can't see the parking lot from the
We
street.
can't see the parking lot.
You can't see anything.
And events, we shuttle people around to make the entrance egress really. So.
Yeah, a lot of the people that come for seminars and so are flying in and then shuttled from.
It's about 50-50 now. We have people that are local, and the number keeps creeping up a couple % every time. Certainly, as we start to market our programs a little bit more effectively locally, I would expect those numbers to climb. Eventually, we would like 90% or better to be local. We want to serve this area of the country. So that number keeps climbing, which means that people are coming in, and leaving to go home. When we host with a bigger keynote speaker, you'll see people fly in, and they're typically staying in infield. We normally use the Hampton Inn, or we'll use the Marriott. I forget the designation, but it's a Marriott chain. And then we'll just bring them in on a moderately sized charter bus kind of. And then there's one pass at the front, drop off, bus leaves, they'll come back, one pass, and out.
And,
Do you want this back?
no,
or-
you can,
I'll email it,
sure,
and I'll email all of the people to everyone
okay, great.
ahead of time, too.
So,
Was there anything else you were
No,
curious about?
that was my question.
I'm just curious, what's the occupancy like for personnel for that building approved for?
Well, I mean, we are in the process of working with the building inspector right now. So one of the things that we address is the fact that the building is currently, its building code is under a single family residential. So we've made an application or pursuing a multi-use building code. So some of that we don't know until the building code inspector finally, to what our architectural firm is going to suggest. So there's sort of that's the official answer, and the unofficial one is a working maximum amount in the facility is about 75 people. Now that could change if they say, hey, you need to take more chairs out of this room, or you need to move chairs here or there. That number down, I don't think I will raise the number, because I don't think I can host any more than that. I mean, you can squeeze 85 people in there, but then you've got people on the second floor looking down over a balcony, which is really awkward. So we're just, for the way that we want to host our events, we want nice, intimate engagements where people are comfortable and enjoy themselves. We're never going to go over 75 inside of the facility. So the number's only going to come down.
Yeah, and I was
if
just
the
curious,
building
had
code
the
is-
fire inspector,
Yeah, we
Calculated
went,
that?
we had a site visit several weeks ago with the building official and the assistant building official from Stafford, who's also fire marshal.
Mhm.
We didn't specifically talk about occupancy load because, he had, the previous building official didn't have them apply for a change of use. So technically, as Laban said, it's still just use as a single-family residence. So we're working on getting all that cleared up, and I'm sure that the building official will address that.
What our understanding with Glenn was that while we're in the process of applying, that we could continue with our program, so
Oh,
long as we
yes.
showed due diligence to address
Right.
any issues brought up.
Right, but officially saying
Right.
maximum
yeah, and
occupancy.
I'm thinking from an emergency standpoint.
Yep.
Fire breaks out,
Right.
egress routes, all that.
he did not seem, at least on visual inspection, to have a big issue with 75 people. We had the chairs set up for the 75, and the egress is from that room and also in the front. There's a bunch of doors.
Yeah.
It did not appear that it would be a huge issue getting 75 people out of there. He didn't express any real concerns.
We've had regular conversations with the Summers Fire. Now they're looking at it not under a building code auspice, but what you're concerned about, which is general safety. They made several recommendations of how we can change exit signage, how we can handle fire suppression in terms of like pictures. So we've made all of the changes that they had on a fairly short list for us. The one that we couldn't address is the elevator, which we've just turned the elevator off so nobody can utilize the elevator one way or the other. We don't have people go to the second floor for our it's immaterial, but it was the elevator certification which helped us realize that our building code was not what it should be. So that's why we've started.
And when Laban says not what it should be, as far as it's a perfectly building.
Right. It's just single-family residence
right.
is not how we're using the facility.
An update to your certificate, elevator certificate, is what prompted the building official to say, "Wait,
Exactly.
what is this place?" That's all.
Yeah, the state inspector for the elevator, for what it's worth, and we'll just take this little rabbit trail and get back on track, but the state official was all but ready to drop a rubber stamp on it. He was very happy with the elevator itself, but then that triggered a notification to the Summers building official, which then he quite quickly pointed out, I don't see an elevator on the plans, and isn't this supposed to be a single family residence? To which we're like, nope, let's have a conversation.
And some of your events are outside,
Yeah,
outdoors.
so
under tent.
the larger event that would be several hundred people have a tent pad behind the facility now that we could put up a tent. And then parking would not be handled on site, but would be handled off site or through valet. So we're going to have tons of cars just lining up along the road. Unless we do the fishing derby. That was the only time actually that the cars have gotten a little,
Oh, yeah.
was the fishing derby. So
How many
That's-
parking spots do you have?
we have 32.
So what happens if you go to 75 people and everybody drives themselves separately?
Then we have auxiliary parking that we push people to on the other side of the property. So at 700 Hall Hill Road, we have some areas where we can view.
Out of view?
Yeah, behind the Blake's house,
Yeah.
there's space. And then worst case, they're in Laban's garage.
And then is there,
Actually, worst case,
Yeah.
I have had to tell some people, hey, sorry, the parking lot's full. You'll need to drop off here or arrange something else. I have had to turn some people away, which we
Is there room for expansion of that parking lot?
would. The way this ended up going was that originally we had asked for a 90-car parking lot that would have all been out of view, and then we had to pare that back to 60-car parking lot. But where it wound up was, and this is my understanding, I think the town of Summers wanted it to be closer to 32, which is what we have. So we parking lot as big as we could build it, but we did feather out the end of it with the idea that maybe at some future point we could add to that and address any kind of parking out of view.
I thought you had like about 60 spots, but maybe I'm.
Do you have
Wishing
the room,
years
like,
ago.
if you're correct in what you're saying, do you have the room if you had to expand on that parking lot? You just thinking,
I mean,
you're thinking that at some
We'd have
point
to have
in
a
time
good
it would shut
conversation
down.
with the
We'll be back.
Wetland Commission.
Okay. Yeah, that would, I mean,
We'll be back. So we're trying to do steps, and,
Sure.
and part of that is we want to show the neighbors, and we're concerned about the neighbors, and we want to show the neighbors that we are concerned. So we're not trying to take big leaps. We're trying to show, hey, we've been really good. There's been no issues, and now we're back. This, and let's see how this goes.
you have a good sized buffer. What is the size of the property?
100
Total.
acres total,
Yeah,
Is
okay,
that
it's 100.
all three lots?
Yeah, that's
All three.
Yeah.
All three lots.
which they're all combined.
On one deed.
Right.
Are they all combined now?
Well,
I don't think they are.
700 hasn't been fully
And
done.
I
but
think 708
708
is its
yeah.
own as
708
well.
's
So
on
there's
5
three-
acres.
It's okay, it's
Yeah.
all three. I got to understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
most of it is with 730 Monticello. We
Right.
took all the back land from
Yeah.
the 700 had most of the land initially,
Right.
but we did a lot line revision and shifted 732 while we were going through this process initially.
And one side of Butts, Mass, correct?
Correct. 732 does.
Yeah.
And then
part
we
of
own a acres or so at Massachusetts, actually.
As like just an
Borders
additional
that?
buffer?
Yeah, it's just like a couple of oddly shaped triangles that just complete the line, and that was the original property line that has been the Demore estate back when it
Here's the
still had.
Massachusetts line.
Yeah, yeah,
so it
yeah,
goes
yep.
over there.
Yep.
A little lot here if they merged.
do you have a number that you want to go up to? So it's hard to say, we want more events, but you don't have a specific number to tell us.
Part of what I'm wanting to do throughout the year is having the ability to test certain things out. So some of these events I've told Jennifer about, I know going into it, some of these are not going to make. And if an event doesn't make, I'd like the flexibility to try something else. So we're probably not going to host an event if it falls far below 30 people. So it needs to be roughly 30 people for us to bother with the logistics and everything. Otherwise, it's kind of like, well, what's the point?
You're testing the waters.
Well, we're trying different speakers, different topics, because part of this is to really know what people are hungry for. I mean, we're doing things like Israel and technology. That would have a nice bite in southern Arkansas, where I grew up. Might not be something that people here are interested in. I don't know. We won't know until we sort of try the program. Or even Jonathan Edwards. It's clearly something where this was his stomping grounds. We're wanting to host that event to see if we get some interest in it. But we don't know in advance exactly which programs are going to be interesting to people, which ones they're going to sign up for. That's part of why I'm wanting, to pursue a lift to the number of events, is to give me that flexibility to try some things. Maybe some events, maybe they make it 75, but having a little flexibility out would be great. And if we can do it in a way that no one in the neighborhood, not sort of none the wiser, don't see, don't see a reason to limit ourselves, at least at the outset. But you could quickly say, like, well, we're not going to have more seminars than I can manage, which I'm not doing this. So you could probably quickly put a cap on the whole thing at 26. I'm not going to do them more often than every other weekend. I got 8 kids and 1 on the way. I got things to do. My wife would kill me.
Yeah.
But we could put if it helps, some sort of arbitrary cap.
No, I mean, I think it would just be, obviously ask that same question.
that's
if
gonna
they
come
wanna
up.
know,
Sure.
You gotta, I'm not objecting to any of it, but you gotta think of who sits across the street and how many times
Sure.
people are out of their driveway. So,
Part of it too is dovetails well with some of the other events that we'd host. Not everything I'm wanting to do is just for us. Though in the current use restrictions, that's how it's delivered. There's portions of it that are just for us. And there's really nothing, and I think this was our understanding, Jennifer, that there's really nothing that's specified in use restrictions that would allow us to host something for the Rotary, for example. So
right, it doesn't speak to you allowing you to do that.
Right.
It's just Hillsdale.
So we would like, on a regular basis, to be able to host the Summers Rotary Club. If they have a fundraising event. I think that was one thing that me and you had a conversation. We hosted the Rotary. They had a fundraiser for the Connecticut Burns Foundation. We had the event, and then Jennifer called me and said, hey, actually, my read of the restrictions is that you really can't host things. And so that's what prompted me to be like, okay, we'll be able to do things like that. We'd like to be able to host a blood drive, or a fundraiser for another charity, or, even have a church picnic, which that might be a little bit different than, it depends on what happens. I think that might fall under the auspices of religious practice, but, part of see as being, a good Christian organization is caring very for your neighbor that is not exclusive to Christianity. There are a lot of places that are doing good work that benefits our community. I'd love to dovetail where we can.
so you said you have a tent pad in the back where you can have a couple hundred there. I mean,
Yep.
Is there a restriction for them and how often they can do that?
Time.
That's the one
time.
time. Okay.
Well, I built the tent pad with a couple of thoughts in mind. It works as a tent pad. If we ever did have and wanted to take advantage of the fine, even if the event number is smaller. It also, from the back visage of the building, it hides the parking lot from view from people that are attending the event.
Okay.
So all they see is this nice plane of grass going out, and they don't see any of the cars either. So not only are the cars invisible from Hall Hill Road, they're invisible from the building too, because we don't like looking at them any more than anybody else would.
Now, you were approached recently by the library people, correct?
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
that's
right.
another charitable. So why don't you just speak
Yeah, the
briefly?
Summers Library is going to host I think it's a home tour fundraiser. They'll go home to home to home to home. They'd like Monticello to be on that list of people. So I told them, hey, actually we can't, but we, as luck would have it, we're trying to have some changes made to that front. So, but that's another example of something where I think we could be a benefit to the community, help them raise money for the library. That seems like a good common cause moment. Sure, I mean, Hillsdale, puts out materials that not everybody loves, but I fancy that there might be those who could make common cause, and I think this is one of those.
September event, I believe.
That's similar to like a garden tour, where
Right.
people go from house to house, and we have recreation. That's recreation.
Well, we have a rare books collection in the library, so for people that are interested in libraries, we kind of have a little something to add to it. So we're hoping to get some airtime on that. One of Hillsdale's donors donated a slice of Jefferson's library to us, so we're pretty proud of that. But would love to put it on display because as our main campus archivist told me, she was like, "Do you have them, behind the case?" I was like, "Yes." She's like, "Are people going to be able to touch them and read them?" I was like, "Absolutely not." She's like, "Well, we're not going to be friends then because I believe that books are meant to be read even if they're old." So she kind of bopped me on the head there. So I didn't tell her how many people would be,
We weren't offered that, Jen, were we?
No.
No, we saw them behind the glass, but
They're locked up for people that I'm not so sure about.
oh, keep the lawyers away. Yeah.
That's right.
I got it.
But
So-
that's just some examples of things that would add to that total number. It wouldn't necessarily be our events, but things that we would be wanting to do in conjunction with the community.
So I guess we'd ask that you schedule a public hearing for us. We'll submit a slightly revised application between now and when the legal notice has to be published to ask that the 1-year extension on the big event.
Right, just a amended
Yeah,
list. So.
correct.
And then, I'm not sure, should we write the number on the conditions list, like, more specifically?
We could. Whatever, I don't know how big you want your legal notice to be.
Well, I don't have to put that on the legal notice.
Oh, all
They
right.
can come look at it.
Okay.
The
But-
legal notice will probably be just the way the agenda is, that you're looking for the events. I'm just saying, I just want to make sure we hit all of the events that you, for numbers and
Yeah, I can take,
number of events and number of attendees. We would take the 4-page conditions and say, specifically number 9, continuing education. Kind of, I guess, like this. Current and proposed.
Yeah, and
Similar
part of
to
this is to simplify that of like hugely delineated items and have a simple set of rules that we can more easily follow because there's not a lot of category and split out. Just have a simple rule of that's the working maximum, and above that we have to have special permission.
But if George specifically say which numbers, because we've got 1
Sure,
through,
sure.
it's 4 pages, we have 1 through 15 for
Oh.
conditions, so there's 15 conditions, so if we
From
can
the
say,
Right.
Condition number 10, 11, 12,
Sure.
15, that would probably be helpful.
yes.
Do people care much the type of event it is? Like you're saying, it's all.
Well, we could consolidate it, they could, if they're saying these, however many, I'm just looking, I didn't look at it beforehand, I'm sorry, but consolidate.
To answer that question, I would say not. We didn't really get a lot of push types of events and how many people at each event per se from the general public. It was sort of a list that Hillsdale put together based on, at that time, what Hillsdale thought it needed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
of course, I've been on the ground. We've had at least one event that didn't make because the topic wasn't, it wasn't something that sounded really exciting. It was classic political Roman era. And it was like, nobody signed up. I was like, well, shocker, guy. I'm telling them, I'm like, shocker,
Yeah, I just say because if it's all delineated, you only got 4 of this type, or you hamstringing yourself by.
Right. But we'd almost be, in some cases, like, well, I guess we'll just add a day because we can't do this. We can't do it at 2 days because we're already spent on the 2 days. So let's add a day so that way we move into the 3-day category when we really don't need 3 days.
No, that's a good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Laban was not here with us then. He was hired after, so we didn't have his wise counsel to.
But I did have to watch all the YouTube videos as part of my onboarding. So,
Another thing I'll ask. So number 1 on here, does that include just people going up to enjoy the property and that type of thing as well?
Let me give a little color to that. So part of the trick with the property is a lot of people have been told by the Blakes, time immemorial, you come on the property anytime you want. Casa es su casa. Come anytime you want. That's great. It's very generous. It also makes it really tricky because there are multiple entry points to our property, which means if we're held to a restriction of 20 people, I don't have a whole lot of mechanisms for knowing at a given moment exactly how many people. Now, we're coaching our staff, so we have some staff, and we're moving boulders and we're moving wood around. We're putting up no trespassing signage. We're trying to stop people and say, hey, listen, this is private property. So we're trying to do our part to maintain that front of it, but then we're limited on the number of passive recreational use waivers that we can give out.
Are you hoping for people to come out? Because of the winery, kids go up there and have a great time, so that type of thing is.
Yeah,
my
I mean,
question.
sort of yes and no. If people want to come on horseback, we'd love horseback riders. If they're wanting to come on their motorized,
Their bikes.
their
I get
to
that.
hit the power line,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that specifically is a problem we're trying to figure out ways to address because dirt bikes can go just about anywhere, as it turns out.
Mhm.
And the power line is a clean cutoff. So you know, there are, those people we're trying to work with and find some way to not allow them on, and people that want to ride horses, or if we want to have a cross-country team come out. I mean, I've been told by the Summers cross-country, you know, coach that, you know, hey, let's wait and see. You know, we don't have our superintendent yet. Let's just let's put that on hold for now. But at some point, I'd like to invite them out, either host a meet there. We have about 3 to 4 miles of trails that weave into the back. It's almost a perfect size to the course. And it's so much better than them running against the road like they do now, which seems, number one, not very safe and not very, you know, aesthetically pleasing. So that, and there's other schools in Massachusetts that would be interested in doing that. So that and the fishing derby, you know, technically when we hosted the fishing derby, we were doing it at the behest of the town. So obviously it's not like we broke any rules, but it's also not explicitly stated in our, you know, rules and regs. So we'd kind of like to just marry those two up and be able to have more people out on the property, but not just anybody, to put some color on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and you have a system, right, as to who can use it?
So we issue a lanyard and a card. We keep a list of everybody who signed a waiver, so that way, if anything happened safety-wise on the property, we'd have an emergency contact for those people. It also gives us a quick visual identifier. If you've got the lanyard that says Blake Center on it, we can quickly see you from a distance and go, okay, yeah, you have permission to be out here. Or, as the case may be, oops, you're not wearing the lanyard, so you might not be approved to be out here. Which it not only helps us, but then people who have been approved then have all of our contact information, and they typically do a better job policing than we do. They'll be out walking, hey, saw somebody without a lanyard, and we're off before they leave.
And you have 2 full-time staff?
Yeah, we have 2 part-time and a custodian. So, and we'll be looking at you know, buddy. Any other questions or things I could help address?
Do you want to schedule a public hearing?
Receive the
What do you
application.
want?
Our next meeting is third.
Works for us, right, Libby?
Later, my wife will give birth, so
You should do.
she's due middle of April.
Yeah, that works for me.
Oh, and refer to planning.
Yeah,
So you have a
yeah.
motion to accept the application, refer to planning, and schedule a public hearing on the date and time.
All separate?
No, one
Okay.
motion.
All right, one motion. So you need a motion to, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
To accept the application,
We have a motion to accept the application, schedule a public hearing on
April 3rd.
April 3rd at 6:30.
And refer to planning.
And refer to planning as well. All in favor?
No, you need a motion.
Oh, you need a motion? Sorry.
Yeah, a second.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
Doug?
Sorry.
Now, all in favor.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Motion
Carried.
carried. Yeah. It's my first one.
So that's it.
That's it. Thank you all very much for your
Thank you,
time,
guys.
and we'll see you on April 3rd.
And we do have those signs now.
Oh,
that
right,
are
we got to post the
required.
sign. How many days prior? 10? And then neighbor notification, is it 10? I think it's,
10.
I'll check, it's 10. ZBA is 15, which is odd, but
I believe we're 10.
I believe you are as
haven't
well, and you'll get a legal notice.
In front of 732, obviously.
Correct.
Okay, great.
You guys.
Thank you,
Cool.
guys.
All right, thank
Yep.
you. Thanks.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
You too. Do you establish if anyone, do you want to do the minutes or do you want to table them?
Yeah.
Some of you were here for one, some of you were here for the other, so.
I wasn't here for either.
Table them then?
Well, if you got enough people, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody's going to read them or challenge.
I don't have-
You just have to say that, I mean, some,
Oh.
if you guys have read them, and someone make a motion to accept them as written for February 6th and February 22nd.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as written for both.
I'll second that.
So we all in favor, except for Howard and Steve. That's all. If you want to, unless you want to talk like Carl was.
No, I'm
he's
good.
watching us.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure he
fine.
wants
Make a
us
motion
to
to
do that.
adjourn, make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay.
That was easy.
All in favor? Pull the plug.